And I got a phone call from the NBA one day and they said, would you be interested in hosting the official NBA Australia show? And I was like, oh my God, like this is a dream come true. You know, I've grown up obsessed with basketball. I can't even believe like I'm talking to the NBA, you know, and working with like them on these projects. So we did the first episode. Everything went really well. You know, the NBA was happy. And the day after the episode, I couldn't sleep. What was going through my head was, Rush, what are you doing? You're not a host. You're a filmmaker. You're a photographer. Like, is this what you really want to do? Yeah, it was probably one of the hardest conversations for me to have, like to muster up that courage to tell the NBA, like, I don't want to be the host of this show. But yeah, the power of saying no, it takes a lot of guts and it takes I think also a lot of maturity and self-belief. But if you find yourself in that position, just listen to your gut.
I caught the Peter Bowl ad yesterday, man. Yeah, how did that feel putting that out there?
Oh, super proud of the Peter Bowl commercial because for me, I love storytelling.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate story, you know, the ultimate Australian story that I think a lot of people can relate to. If people don't know who Peter Bowl is, you know, he's a fellow from South Sudan, war-torn country, and he's got an incredible story, you know, gone against all the odds. It's kind of the classic rags to riches story. And, you know, now he's going to the Paris Olympics, and just the production and the way that we were able to put it together, I was extremely happy with the outcome.
Did you have creative control, freedom for something like that?
For, I guess, like the general kind of project, I had quite a lot of creative like control with that. I mean, there's obviously, you know, you got to deal with management and the client and other creative people that are involved in the process. But a lot of people come to me because they believe in the storytelling and the productions that I can put together. So, you know, there's always a lot of back and forth, and that was a 5-month project. So a lot went into it.
Tell us about storytelling. For you, that is the centerpiece of your work. There's no piece that I've seen of yours. Actually, that was the thing that captivated me to your work many years ago when I was working at Basketball Australia. That's how I came across it, that you were able to portray these basketballers without necessarily even using much basketball there. You know, you kind of capture the essence of the character, the player, and what the sport means to them, and then how you translate that into a short little montage, right? There's a lot of footage that you use to create emotions that's not necessarily tied to the sport itself. And there was a lot of that in the Peter Bowl one as well. Yeah,
definitely. I think for me, the storytelling really started to come together for me when I first worked with Patty Mills, because I realized, okay, basketball is just an excuse to get people to watch this, but let's dig a little deeper. Let's talk about racism. Let's talk about culture. Let's talk about dancing, family. And yeah, it just made me realize like, oh, I have the power to really get people emotionally connected to these videos that I'm creating. Because when I first started, you know, it was very much about, I just want something to look really good. You know, let's shoot a girl on a beach or a hip hop artist over here and make him look cool. But then when I started working with Patty, I was like, oh, hold on a minute here. Like, you know, there's something really special that I can do with this fellow, and I can get people teary-eyed in 60 seconds, 90 seconds in a little piece that we put out. So once you realize that you kind of have that power, I guess, you know, it really triggers off a spark.
He's a good one as well. There's a lot of depth to his character. That is something that for him, it's not ever really even about basketball, right? Like basketball, he's only ever used that as a vessel.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm naturally quite an emotional and sensitive person. Yeah. So I'm good at picking up. And it's very important when you're working with, particularly with someone like, you know, Patty Mills, who's an Indigenous basketball player. You've got to be sensitive to his feelings, his culture, his family. You've got to understand the story. So you've got to do a lot of research. And yeah, I've really enjoyed working with him and pushing the boundaries of what I'm capable of doing, and you know, it's a real gift to be able to tell someone's story.
You're at the forefront of the storytelling with sport, right? There's you can see how your work influences the industry as a whole, and when you put something out, that becomes almost like a standard, and then there are a lot of other people that will take inspiration from what you do and almost emulate what you do, right? So then it becomes, and in many ways it's the paying homage and it's a compliment. But then it forces, or does it then force you to have to evolve your work and your style? And
Definitely. Look, I'm all about being a trendsetter and trying to be 2 steps ahead. And so, of course, that's a huge compliment that I know that other people get inspired by the work that I've done. And then it also keeps you on your toes. And it's like, okay, there's a bunch of other young whippersnappers who are coming right behind me, and I need to keep pushing myself. And I mean, video production is very much a team sport, but it's also healthy to be competitive. You're dealing with athletes, they're competitive, and it's just naturally going to be inside you as well. So yeah, I'm always trying to push myself, educate myself on a daily basis, if that's through business, camera techniques, just being inspired by, I try and also look at different styles and genres to get inspired by, even, coming here on Smith Street in Melbourne and seeing an art gallery, that stuff can inspire me in certain ways, even just like the color palette.
Dude, that was one of the main reasons why I started this up. I draw so much inspiration from people that aren't necessarily designers, right? When I'm working, I'll have music, and even just before we fired this up, had some music going on, had the incense going. I take a lot of inspiration from any other creative outlet that's not necessarily directly tied to what it is I'm doing, right? I want to draw something from a different, from another stimulus, fire that up and seeing what can come of that. So that was, it's good to hear that you draw your inspirations from elsewhere. You've got a big music influence as well in your work.
Yeah, I love music. I mean, I was a DJ, full-time DJ for about 10 years. So I was just thinking about that actually as you were talking, because my background stems from hip-hop. So I'm a huge hip-hop head. And in saying that, I'm obsessed with classical music. I love classical music because that really triggers the emotion in storytelling, particularly videos. So I think if you get the chance for people watching this to check out some of my work, you'll see there's a big contrast in hip-hop influence in my work, but then this classical style music too, strings and harmonies and just ways to create more emotion in the storytelling.
For sure, man. Actually, you hear a lot of different strings in classical music being sampled throughout a lot of hip-hop music as well, and that is, like we were saying, just to dig deeper, just to pull up different emotions. I want to talk about, you were just touching on starting off with music, and I know that very early on, photography was your thing, and then you started to evolve your approach to it, and then you introduced videography and then storytelling. And I was thinking about, after catching up with you the last time, just that process of growth, is that for me personally, and let me know if this makes any sense to you, if you relate. Early on, we focus a lot on skill and talent, right? That's something that even little young kids, we compliment them because they're gifted, they have a particular skill in a way, and then we rest on those laurels for quite a while, and then you make it through to, you carry that maybe in your 20s, and then at some point you realize actually hard work is going to carry you further. That was a lesson that I learned really late in life. But then after your 20s and 30s, you realize that hard work is good and it can take you far. But then now there's another element of there's a balance in having to be authentic in your approach, and then relinquishing the internal drive and then focusing on the community, right? And I've seen a lot of those parallels with you as well.
I think, look, I'm a workaholic for sure. I'm just so passionate about what I do. It's just what I live and breathe. And I've only ever been a full-time creative. I've never had a normal 9 to 5, thank God. It hasn't always been a successful year financially for, a lot of those years, but it's all I've ever done. So I think, there's a lot of different chapters that you learn along the way. I feel like I lived in America for a while, which was a blessing. You know, I'm the classic kid from Canberra, you know, single mum, grew up humble beginnings. But when I went to the US, it just made me realize, like, oh, you got to dream big. You got to think big. Anything is possible. You know, particularly here in Australia, because we're so far away, you know, from the world, we just feel like a lot of things aren't possible because we're here. Now with the internet, you know, maybe it's a tiny bit closer, but I still feel like with a lot of Australians, it's just like, no, like I'd never be able to do that. But I feel like now with the internet, particularly more than ever, anything is possible. You know, like this YouTube episode, not saying it will, but as an example, this could just go viral and completely change your life and my life because on YouTube or Spotify, wherever it is, it just gets picked up for whatever reason. And things can change, you know, so quickly now. So I guess where I'm going with this is, you know, America really gave me a strong work ethic and understanding the importance of relationships and putting yourself out there. And then, you know, I came back to Australia and I've kept that American mentality where I've always pushed myself and just tried to make things happen. Even when I was back, you know, after living in America at my mum's place in Canberra, and it felt like, oh God, how am I going to do this? But I just kept pushing.
Yeah, you had a different standard at that point. Like you were exposed to a different way, a different approach to it. And how long ago was that? So that was like in your 20s, yeah?
When I went to the US?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 2006. So that was when I was 22.
22. All right. So like the world has completely changed since then.
Yeah.
And so back then it would have been, Australia would have been very disconnected from America.
Oh, yeah.
And so for you to have gone over there, you would have been not just exposed to that world, but you were in it. And that would have just given you a sense of like, shit, you know what? There is a higher standard that we can reach for.
Oh, definitely. I mean, going to America, when I think back to it now, it was a pretty ballsy thing to do. At 22, being in Canberra, I had no money behind me, but I was just like, I finished my photography degree at the time, and I was like, I want to pursue music. So I'm going to go to the heart of where hip hop music comes from, and that's LA and New York. So I got an internship, and it just completely changed my life. I was so shy. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I just threw myself in the deep end. And I've got this saying that you would have seen in my studio. It's stop thinking, just jump. And I've always lived by that saying. Just go for it. Don't think twice. Just make it happen.
You had your finger on the pulse with how you navigated and wanted to make sure that you are just doing the things that you strictly want to do. And I've had this thought that we'd lean into some opportunities that aren't necessarily the right fit for us or don't really take us on the right trajectory. Like for me personally, I've seized opportunities time and time again without necessarily thinking about where this is going to be taking me. A lot of I can look back and say that those were good opportunities. They were not necessarily right opportunities though. And it steered my career in a way that I actually didn't really want it to go. And that's something that, you know, I've had to reflect on. My thought was that we are made up of not just the opportunities that we take on, but also the ones that we say no to. And that's helped us guide our trajectory in a certain way. There was a big one that you had to turn down. Talk to us about that.
Yeah. So to give it some context, I had a YouTube show for 2 years that was specializing in basketball. I was interviewing a lot of basketball players, and I was building up to, you know, wanting to have, I want to have the biggest YouTube, you know, show in Australia / around parts of the world, interviewing some of the big basketball names. So I formed a relationship with the NBA through the show, and, you know, they were really enjoying what I was doing. You know, I never thought that I would be hosting a YouTube channel because I'm quite a shy person, and I didn't think I would end up in a position like this. And I got a phone call from the NBA one day, and they said, Rush, we've got an exciting opportunity for you. Would you be interested in hosting the official NBA Australia show? And I was like, oh my God, like this is a dream come true. You know, I've grown up obsessed with basketball. I can't even believe like I'm talking to the NBA, you know, and working with like them on these projects. Now the fact that they're asking me to host the official NBA Australia show. Like, I can't believe it. I called my mum. I was like, Mum, guess what? Like, the 14-year-old me would just be like jumping for joy. So it was an incredible opportunity. They were like, look, we'll fly to America, various times, and interview like a lot of the your dream players, and when there's All-Star weekend, we'll get you over. Maybe the NBA Finals, we'll get you to come over as well. I'm just like, oh my God, like, wow, like this is incredible. And to give us some context too, this is coming after a rough period from COVID. I missed out on 18 months of work. Then just as things were starting to pick up again, boom, cost of living kicks in. So as I was getting this phone call, things had been extremely quiet for a good 6 months. So I was like, oh my God, like, okay, I can pay the rent again, So we did the first episode. It was a hit. Everything went really well. The NBA was happy. And the day after the episode, I just couldn't sleep. I woke up in the morning, my gut was just screaming. And what was going through my head was, Rush, what are you doing? Like, you're not a host. You're a filmmaker. You're a photographer. Like, is this what you really want to do? Like, because if you sign up to this and you continue to do this, you're gonna start being deemed as Rush the host, not Rush the filmmaker and photographer. What you've been doing for the last 15 years. So, I called my mum and I spoke to my creative director that works full time with me, and I was like, I honestly couldn't believe I was even having this conversation with both of them. And I mean, this is why it's so important to have people around you that give you honest feedback and are just real with you. There's no nonsense. And they just said, look, we know that you're a passionate person and you've just got to listen to your gut. If this is how you feel, you've just got to stick to your guns. So, I called the guy at the NBA who's a absolutely lovely fellow. He's given me a lot of opportunities, and yeah, it was probably one of the hardest conversations for me to have, like, to muster up that courage to tell the NBA, like, I don't want to be the host of this show, because they've also found it extremely difficult to find the right kind of fit for the show. So I know for them asking me, like, that was a big deal. And I'm someone that usually I'm always saying yes to opportunities. And one thing I've really learned in the last 6 to 12 months, particularly after this moment, is you don't have to say yes to everything. It's important to say no, but particularly if your gut is telling you it's not the right thing. And so, I told them no. And what was incredible after this moment, it just gave me tunnel vision, and I just knew exactly where I had to go and what I had to do. And honestly, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because everything has been so clear since that moment. And honestly, I've had probably the most successful 6 months of my career since that moment. Things just started coming together, and it's just, without getting super spiritual with it all, but I'm a huge believer in the universe, and it points you in the right direction, and it tests you at times. It presents you with things and kind of says, hey, Rush, like, are you going to take this? Are you going to go this path? Or are you going to go this path? Where are you going to take it? And yeah, thankfully I took the right path, but I'm also extremely grateful for that opportunity. And it feels crazy to say that I didn't take it, but they were just grateful that I was honest with them as well. And they totally understood, like, oh, look, because they hired me in the beginning as a filmmaker. So they knew initially that that's what I was. But the power of saying no, it takes a lot of guts, and it takes I think also a lot of maturity and self-belief. But if you find yourself in that position, just listen to your gut.
That's valuable, man. That's incredibly valuable. And to your point, how even that process, learning, discovering in yourself that this isn't it, not feeling right about it, saying no. And in many ways, that would have really helped accelerate everything else afterwards, right? Like, if not for that, and maybe that's what that was. Maybe that opportunity was just there to accelerate everything else. So as you were saying about like the universe providing opportunities, the opportunity wasn't for that. The opportunity was for this.
No, exactly. I mean, I'm a kid that grew up living off Michael Jordan, bought his shoes and wore all his jerseys, and I was just obsessed with the NBA. So it just felt so crazy to be offered that position and then not to take it. But as you've just mentioned, it pointed me in the right direction. And yeah, I've just so grateful that I had that confidence to say no.
Yeah, dude, that's something that I'm really trying to grapple with and do more of and just work of gut feeling rather than trying to crunch numbers and let data dictate, and especially this day and age. And we could probably even chat on that, man, because like you're doing a pretty fine job of trying to balance all the different elements, all the different factors in, how you navigate your growth, but also accommodating for what this segment demands of you, whether it be social media, and then how that influences your clientele or how that influences your followers, because a lot of people are taking inspiration from you, but at the same time, you need to curate your work in a way that is authentically you, but is still also able to reach them. But with algorithms and having to catch attention so quickly, how does that affect the storytelling? How does that allow for something just to stew a little bit?
Look, I've gone around in circles many times over the last couple of years, but I've made a real point of reminding myself about one quote, and that is your vibe attracts your tribe. So I don't worry about numbers anymore. It used to be all like, this video only got 500 views. I'm trying to get 5,000 or 10,000. It's not a success unless 50,000 people see this.
Yeah.
But what I've learned is, particularly in the last couple of months, even if the video gets 50 views, but 30 of those people are really affected by that video, then that's a game changer. And, so for me, it's all about speaking to the people that I'm trying to reach. And
we spoke about this. The focus is on the 1,000 true fans. It's not trying to bring up those numbers. And I think that by trying to bring up those numbers, then you'd start to play into a narrative that will dilute your work in order to be able to catch more eyes. There's going to be things that you have to compromise.
Yeah, definitely. So for me, my video production company, I would say it's more the mid to high end range. So every time I put out a video, I'm always like, I want this to be the best thing I've ever created. But when you're doing short form content, and now with social media, I've realized that consistency is far more important. Of course, there's certain projects that, like this Peter Ball one, we just spent 5 months, putting this together. But you've got to stay consistent. People's memories now are just horrendous. Our attention span is worse than ever before, and it's going to continue to keep getting worse. So unfortunately now, you've just got to keep popping up and reminding people that you exist. And that's a way that I've been able to consistently, keep getting work and just keep reminding people, hey, I'm here. Hire me.
There's that Peter Ball one. What was that cut? That was it was a minute?
That was a 90-second video, but we also did a 15, 30, and a 60 edit.
So when you're planning out these edits, you know that there's one story that you're trying to translate across all the different forms. Does that compromise the story at varying degrees?
Definitely. So, look, what was great, I had an amazing client, and he said to me from the very beginning, Rush, our focus is the 90-second video. Cool. Everyone's doing short form content and a lot of UGC content. So UGC is phone generated content, user generated content. And he wanted to go the opposite direction, which is, music to my ears, because he wanted high production value storytelling that was more for commercial, world, long form, being 90 seconds. So the focus was on the 90-second clip. But then it brings a lot of problems when you're cutting it down, because it's very hard to create that emotion in 15 or 30 or even 60 seconds. The core of the story is essentially lost. But I mean, without getting all into the details, essentially the shorter versions are to draw people to the 90-second edit.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like a trailer for a trailer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So was that part of a series?
So yeah, we did 3 commercials for this company. So 3 different Olympic athletes, which was really exciting. It was between Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane, and look, there's just so much that goes into it. Particularly when you're working on a higher scale. Even the commentary, you would have heard there's some commentary in that Peter Bowl video. We had to fly to Sydney and work with a voiceover artist, to do that, and that in itself can take just like 3 to 4 weeks to organize. Get studio time, organize a narrator, get the script right. But it's all part of the process, and this is the stuff I love doing.
Far out, man. I remember that. Like I heard another podcast that you're on, and you mentioned how putting together, it was for the Tom Brady, the edit for that, how you would have to travel distances and hire and bring on a crew and the talent just to shoot something that's going to be like 0.3 of a second.
I mean, look, it's a gift and a curse being I'm a perfectionist. I've realized that over the years. Like I just want everything. When you've got a vision, I'll go to whatever extent it is to get that shot that is in my head. Or especially when you're working with high profile athletes, they've got such a high standard, that they've put out there, and they're all about, especially when you're working with someone like Tom Brady. He's one of the greatest athletes just in the world in general. So for me, it's like, okay, like if I'm going to be working with Tom Brady, I've got to be at that level. I've got to put myself at the highest possible standard that I can deliver. So I went all out with those projects.
Yeah, dude, that goes back to what you were saying about when you moved to LA and how it showed you a different standard to what you're familiar with here in Australia. And you've worked with a lot of really high profile people. So take away the celebrity of these people, ignoring that part and just focusing on just all the value that they bring, not so much the value, but just their wisdom, and being around them and how it exposes you to a certain standard that many people cut off from. Now, what are some of the really important lessons that you've taken away from them, whether it just be through your interaction with them or through researching them and becoming familiar with them? Because I'm sure that before you put together a piece as a homage to them, you really want to understand their character. Yeah,
it's extremely important to do your research, before you're working. I mean, with anyone, doesn't matter who it is. If it's the local cafe or Tom Brady or Kobe Bryant, you got to make sure you're aware of who they are, what they do, and what they stand for. So with a lot of these guys, I mean, their work ethic is second to none. So I've done a project with Kobe Bryant, and he was famous for, I think, getting up at like 4 o'clock in the morning and training. Not that I'm trying to live to that standard. I'm a hard worker, but that's another level. But I think what I've really gained, like I love working with athletes because they're just so motivated, so inspired. They're trying to achieve greatness. They want to be the best, and that rubs off onto me too. Like I want to be the best in my field. I want to achieve the greatest results that I can. I'm just someone that I always think, when I'm having conversations like this, or I'm having a coffee with a mate and I'm showing them the video, on Instagram, I don't want to ever feel like I sit there and go, oh no, like I should have put that extra effort into that one shot. Oh, this is embarrassing showing them this video. And I mean, they're never going to pick that up, but I just want to feel like I gave it everything I possibly could. So this is what a lot of these guys talk about, when they get on the basketball court or the football field. They just want to leave it all out, on the field and know that they gave it absolutely everything that they could have.
Yeah, I suppose the difference between bringing in that work ethic is that that they train, and then just when it's time for them to perform, they just have that one little opportunity, right? That small window. With Brady, comes down to a single pass, but to make that single pass, he would have practiced that pass thousands upon thousands of times. you know, like for what you do, you have the opportunity just to do the little tweaks, the refinements, and then to some degree that can kind of work against you, because like then opens up opportunities to second guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think it's so important to have a team of people around you that you trust in. So I have a very limited group of people that I rely for feedback. And I always say to them, like, whatever you do, don't try and stroke my ego. You need to tell me, does this suck or not? Because like, this needs to be the best thing that we can do, you know? So we need, honesty is extremely crucial, and having people that, you know, you can surround yourself with that, you know, think along the same lines as you do and are, you know, inspired, you know, as much as you do. I mean, for me, I also realize it's my video production company. I'm going to go absolutely all out with it. I don't expect the people that work with me to do exactly that, you know, at the same time, but you need people that are just as enthusiastic and passionate.
Are they open to giving you that feedback?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a creative director. She works full time with me, and one of the things I love about her the most is that she's just brutally honest. So if she says it's good, I know it's good.
It's that South American, you know.
Yeah. Brutally honest. Yeah.
Yeah, no, good, man. I think that's one of the things that some creatives, where the struggle is, it works in many ways. Like, so I can only speak for myself really, is when getting positive feedback, it's hard to know sometimes if that's warranted or if there is a motivation behind it. And then when you're hearing criticism, and most of the time the criticism's coming internally, right? Like, it's hard for me to gauge whether or not the work I'm doing is actually up to a standard. Like, how have you dealt with that?
Look, I'll give you a good example. About 18 months ago, I put together a Ben Simmons project. This was a passion project. I'd previously worked with Ben Simmons on a commercial here in Melbourne. Without getting into all the details, it was essentially about a project related to his mental health. So I worked on this project for about 2 months. You know, we were writing the scripts, filming. I had a local Melbourne hip hop artist make a track just for the video. We put blood, sweat, and tears into it, and I did the final edit. And I was like, okay, we're going to release this in 3 days. And as I was watching it back for the final time, my gut was just screaming, going, this isn't up to standard. This isn't right. And I was just like, okay, back to the drawing board. Like, I'm not going to put this out. So we spent another month reshooting scenes. As you know, we touched on before, I drove out to Geelong just to film a 3-second barbershop scene. But it's one of my favorite scenes in the videos.
Was that the We Got Your Back?
Yeah, We Got Your Back, mate.
I remember that.
That
one, yeah.
Yeah.
And you put it out there though. That wasn't the first cut?
Yeah, so the one that is out to the world now, that wasn't the first edit. Like, I probably reshot a quarter. Like, I had what I thought was the finished edit, and then reshot a whole bunch of other scenes, like another month of filming. So
did it change the essence of it, the narrative and the story behind it?
For me, it was just, I guess I wanted a bit more wow factor, a bit more edge. I wanted to be a little bit more culturally relevant to Melbourne as well. And this is also to give it some, I guess, like a bit of a background. It was fresh out of COVID as well. So not to give myself reasons why it wasn't flowing in the beginning, but I pretty much hadn't filmed a project for about 18 months, because of COVID. So it was kind of like getting back on the tools again, getting familiar with shooting again, and getting those, creative juices going. So, but that project, it was a passion project. I invested a lot of my money into it, but it was one of the best things that, I've put out that's led to a lot of opportunities. But more so, it really helped people. Definitely Ben Simmons, his brother showed him the video, and so his family shared the video, and I know that he sat down and watched it. So that means a lot to me, knowing that he actually got to see it and was affected by it.
Yeah, good.
So, so I mean, this, like I said before, this is the power that you have as a creative. You can, change people's lives. And particularly with some of these, well-known figures that you think would never see your work. Now with social media, you've got the power to do that.
Yeah, you did that project. There was something authentic about it, and as you're saying that, like it was something that was very personal to you. There was no intention behind it. There was no commercial drive. It was like, you know what, I feel something here. There's like, working that gut feeling. There's something that I want to say. There's and you've been connected with athletes. I think you have a different appreciation for what they go through. And what was it at that time? That wasn't when he was still in the Sixers, was it?
Yeah, he just, I guess, was leaving the Sixers. Like, he hadn't joined the team yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was all about, we got your back, mate. Like, Melbourne and the community here is going to support you no matter what.
And having told many stories, I think that you see them as people, which is kind of strange to have to highlight, right? Because they are, right? And and that's probably one of the advantages that you have, is that working with so many of them, you're able to break through and cut through. There's the public persona that they have, and understand that there is a real person behind it. And I think that's how you go about telling the stories.
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, of course, there's a lot of times I've been nervous working with some of these big names, but as you do it more and more, you start realizing, this guy worries about the same stuff that I do. He has mental health problems like I did at one point. And so, yeah, it's just realizing that they're humans.
Yeah, it's something that's like sweet. Kids, they're out here, especially when like the ones that the people that you work with, I mean, out here in Australia, they got shit on. Yeah, there's a lot happening, and for you to come in and make the process easier for them as well, but not just easier, but make it accommodating for them to be able to then just relax and then be their authentic self as well. It just makes your job that much easier to be able to capture that.
Yeah, I found that almost the bigger the star they are, the more humble they tend to be. Like Kobe Bryant was probably the most down-to-earth person that I've ever come across. And, before he walked into the rooms, it was like, don't talk to him, don't interact with him. But then Kobe walked around and shook our hands and introduced himself. And when we're filming him getting on his private jet, the final scene, he came over and shook our hands again and thanked us. And
cool.
Did you have a good time these last couple of days? Like, yeah, Kobe. Like, yeah, like.
Because you met that was post-retirement Kobe, and I think that was a very different Kobe.
Yeah.
To in-game basketball. Kobe.
Definitely. Unfortunately, what happened to Kobe and his passing, but I'm just so blessed that I got that opportunity, because that has just completely changed my career. And it's also emphasized too, the importance of documenting and capturing these moments. Not to put more pressure on myself, but it also just makes you realize, like, you never know what's going to happen in any given moment, and to capture these stories and these photographs, it's so important because it's history.
How do you manage the whole capturing a moment and trying to capture the authenticity of it without having to be locked up in having to make it perfect?
Yeah. I mean, look, a lot of the time when you're working with high profile athletes, you've got very limited time to shoot these guys. So often you're just having to think really quickly, and you learn a few tricks along the way. I mean, that's why it's very important to try and have some kind of interactions with the subject before you film them, to make them feel comfortable, let them know that, you're a cool guy. You're going to make them look good. You're going to make them feel comfortable. Because, this is the thing too, not to name any names, but there's a lot of high profile people that I've shot that are extremely insecure, and in front of the camera that is really reflected. So you're like, oh, okay, like I wasn't expecting, this person to be so kind of worried about how they look, but okay, I get it. Like, so you learn a few tricks. I think for me, thankfully, I've traveled the world. I've got friends of all different nationalities and backgrounds, and I've been to the favelas in Brazil, and the traveled parts of the Philippines, and then I've been to the Hollywood parties. So I feel like I can get along with anyone, and that's also part of the skills that you've got to gain over the years when you're a film director. There's a lot of times where I've just had to go up to people on the street in countries where they don't speak a word of English, but you've got to figure out, how to interact with these people and get a shot, or ask for, them to, can you stand here? And it's just part of people skills. Communication is, I would put that at the top of the list when it comes to photography or filmmaking. It's so important.
Yeah, that's something that's underestimated, man. It's not just a matter of just picking up a bit of equipment and pointing and snapping. And to your point about how today everyone is a photographer, right? Like everyone has access to a camera, but you can capture a photo, but there's got to be some substance behind that. And I think that's what's going to separate those that can capture something that aesthetically looks good, and then something that's going to like really deeply resonate with their audience. And then like with your work, you've taken that extra bit further, and with your filming, how long did it take you to go from photography to then wanting to stretch that out into videography?
I think in the beginning, a lot of it came to financially. I just couldn't afford a video camera, to put it simply. Photography is a good way to just get started because, it's one shot. You don't need to outlay too much money. Like I bought a film camera. I started off shooting film, and I absolutely love black and white film. So I bought a film camera for $150, and I still use it to this day, and it takes some of the most beautiful shots that I've ever captured. So it's just getting that, I think in the beginning, getting your confidence. I've always had a good eye. I've always known how to frame really well. I'm not very technical, but I just know how to capture emotion and direct people. And when I was particularly in my early 20s, I was just extremely shy. So documentary style photography, I was really good at capturing images without people realizing. Mm-hmm. So I guess as you mature, as you get older, you build that confidence, you make a little bit more money. And then it just came to honestly just being able to afford the camera, and technology changed, dramatically, particularly in the last, like 5 to 7 years. So that made it a lot easier to start shooting video content that I was actually proud of. Because say when I first moved to Melbourne 10, 12 years ago, the video cameras at the time that I could afford, there was such a huge difference to the higher end guys that were filming. Whereas now the camera that I own, which a lot of other videographers here, like local guys own, like young dudes own, who are shooting, just content for like a cafe or something like that. It's these cameras they shoot Hollywood blockbuster movies with now.
You do both. You still parlay in both. Would you say that there's more of a slant now towards video?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, videos where it's all at.
Yeah. So with your videos, and that seemed to have unlocked a whole new chapter for you of being able to explore the whole storytelling. Yeah,
definitely. Because of course, there's beauties to both art forms, photography and video, but you can just convey a lot more storytelling in video. You've got music, you've obviously got the visuals, you've got a lot more images that you work with, and there's a lot more that goes into making a video to one incredible photograph. So I just like I've said a few times, I've got such a passion for storytelling, and there's plenty of stories to tell. There's always humans are fascinated by humans, So for me, I just love learning about other people's stories, their culture, where they've come from. I love traveling the world and discovering new places and new things, and getting inspired by different colors. And I'm big into music, like I've talked about a few times. So for me, even when I went to a place like Brazil, the reason why I went there was to learn about the music. I was just obsessed with the Brazilian music. Still am. So, but it's just a little bit dangerous to pull out the camera there. That was a problem.
You take one shot, and the camera's gone.
Yeah.
With the something like with the Peter Bowl one, and I got the sense that there was so much you were trying to put together in 90 seconds. Have you thought about doing more long form?
Yeah, I would definitely love to do more documentaries. I guess, it's just this thing of trying to find that balance. Okay, right now the demand is obviously a lot more short form content. It's kind of the opportunities that just come to me personally as well, like what clients are after. It's the year of the Olympics, so right now I'm shooting numerous Olympic commercials. I'm doing another one over the next 2 days. So it's just kind of depending on what the market is feeding you at the time, but it's also extremely important to balance it out with your passion projects and what fires you inside, what keeps you motivated and going. Because I never want to see what I do as a job. I still don't see it as a job, and I never want to see it as a job, because for me, I feel like the day I start calling it a job is when I'll lose the passion for it, and I never want to feel like that.
How do you keep that at bay?
Well, thankfully for me, like I've created a niche. My niche is athletic content inspired by hip hop. So, for a number of years, in the beginning, it was a struggle financially, building the niche, but now I'm in a position, thankfully, where I'm pretty much just getting fed a lot of dream jobs a lot of the time. So, I'm extremely grateful, but it comes down to hard work. It's things just aren't given to you. You got to work extremely hard to make it happen. But it's just about, like I mentioned before, believing in yourself, dreaming big, thinking big, and just I never take no for an answer. If things fail and don't work, I'm just like, I'm going to make it happen. Like, I believe in this. Like, you can't tell me no.
So you don't concern yourself so much with everything else that's going on?
Yeah, look, as bad as it probably sounds, I pay very little attention to the Australian market. I'm concerned about what's happening overseas. I'm always thinking 2 steps ahead. I think, of course, like I want to be on one hand, I want to be community minded and mentor people here and be aware of what's going on in the community. But when I say I'm not paying attention to what's going on here, I don't want to get caught up in the politics and the small town mentality, which I think happens a lot here in Australia. People get really, it's a tall poppy syndrome. You get caught up with, Freddie down in Collingwood's doing this, and why didn't I get that job? Of course, like I've felt like that many times, but I think for me, it's just probably a maturity thing. You get older, you become a lot more secure within yourself. And I just spent a lot of time looking at, what's the American market doing? What are these guys doing here in London? What are these guys shooting here in Paris? I mean, there's incredible videographers in Russia, getting influence, but at the same token, keeping it very authentic and Australian as well. Like when I did this Tom Brady project, it hasn't been released yet, but I made an Australian tribute to Tom Brady. It's pretty much a Melbourne tribute to Tom Brady. That's what I did with Kobe Bryant as well. And a lot of the projects I do, because what I've learned is the most important thing to understand is you have to be proud of who you are and where you're from. Embrace, for me, like it was never cool to be from Canberra, but I look at someone like NWA. They made Compton cool. Compton was not cool before NWA. So I look at that as inspiration and think, okay, like a lot of people diss Canberra, but I'm going to promote Canberra and own it. Yeah. So I think it's the thing that I always remind myself about, like, is just, be proud of who you are. Don't be try and be something that you're not, and particularly for people that come from, a multicultural background, I always say, like, embrace your culture. Like, you're lucky you guys have a culture that you can draw on. I don't have a culture that I can draw on. So that's why I'm so fascinated with traveling and working with people like Patty Mills, because for them, I'm like, bro, it's so cool. You have a dance, you have a language, you have a traditional food that your mum always cooked and your grandmother cooked. I don't have that. So
yeah, no, you're absolutely right when you're saying just to take a bit of pride, or take as much pride as you can of yourself, right? But just to recognize that you are who you are because of the whole entire makeup of the entirety of your life, all the experiences that you've had, and there is a uniqueness about you. And that's really just the best way to cut through everything else, right? Like that's just it, like we all have one thing that we have that we can contribute to the greater whole.
Definitely. And look, it takes time. It's also just part of maturing as a person, as a man. The world's consistently changing. I've got a lot of insecurities just like anyone else, but it's just, I think, doubling down on your strengths and just being proud of who you are and where you're from, and realizing that no one can replicate you. you know? So you got to be proud of yourself.
Yeah, it is strange. Like those insecurities, and yeah, like you said, we all have them. But then it's like, hang on a minute, you know what? I'm going to leverage off this, right? Like these shortcomings that you think, or seemingly shortcomings, like, no, that's you, man. You got to live with that. So just turn it on its head and then put that in the spotlight. Like,
yeah, totally. Like embrace the thing that you feel even might not be cool, and even go 10 times harder with that to turn it into something that's cool. So yeah, I'm big into that.
Yeah, like with this year, man, there was no point up until maybe, I guess I started this in August, but before that, you would not see my face on social media.
Yeah.
And there was a Tim Ferriss line that was, he said that the thing that you're most afraid to do is what you probably most need to do.
Yeah.
Right? And the irony in all that is that to get me to this point of doing this, I had to fail a lot at what I thought I was going to do, and then recognize why I was failing at that, and it all came from insecurities. And then now I'm like, you got to lean into it, man. You got to lean into your insecurities.
100%. And what you said is bang on. It's so important to fail. You know, like I've realized that even though I'm a perfectionist, I've realized that where I've had a lot of success over the years is I'm not afraid to fail and put myself out there. Just as long as I know I tried and I gave it a go. If it worked, awesome. If it doesn't, I've learned something from that experience. So, and I think, yeah, the Tim Ferriss example is really a good one too. Like personal brand is where it's all at. I was the same as you. 4 years ago, I literally didn't have any photos of myself on social media, and people would come to my office and be like, "Oh, Rush, I had no idea what you look like." And at first I was like, "Yeah, that's really cool and mysterious." And then I had a friend come over who's really into marketing. He said, "Bro, what are you doing? Like, put yourself out there. Like, people buy from people. You have a great story. Everyone has a story. You need to tell your story." And that was the first time I was like, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" Like, of course.
Especially now at this point in your trajectory, you have a heavy focus on community. You know, you just touched on that Australia has a particular way of being a little bit behind the eight ball when it comes to particular trends, or especially in you know, videography and the storytelling, that way that it's never really been the leader in that space. Sure, we've had some incredible storytellers that have come out, but as a whole, it's usually the follower, right? But now you're using your experience and your position in the industry to educate and to bring this and to cultivate a community. And to what you were saying about like a personal brand, how has that helped with this leadership position that you're trying to establish yourself in now?
Developing a personal brand is the best thing I ever did. It's been an absolute game changer, because I'm a pretty shy person and I'm a very private person. So social media has been extremely hard for me to, you know, put myself out there. Like 3 years ago, there was no way I'd probably even have the confidence to come and do an episode like this. But I started a YouTube channel. You know, I felt like there was a gap in the market. I was like, I'm going to learn how to speak in front of the camera, build up another skill. And thankfully, I'm by no means perfect at it, but I've gained that confidence. And I'm really proud of myself for doing that, because I'd never imagined, I could do that. But yeah, a personal brand, it just, people get emotionally connected to, because what I realized, it's all about storytelling, and I need to storytell my experiences. I've been a full-time creative for 15 plus years, and I get a lot of young guys getting in touch with me asking for advice and looking for help, and I'm realizing I do know a few things. Like maybe I can put myself out there a bit more and talk about my experiences, because I want to see people here in Australia be successful. So if I can help fast forward there, I guess videography or photography ways, by even just a few months, a few years, by giving them some tips and telling some stories and putting myself out there, then it's a job well done.
Yeah, man, and it speaks a lot to them as well, that that they are willing and open to learn and develop and grow, and just admit to themselves that you know what, I don't know everything I need to know. There is this person here who is offering this mentorship, that's trying to build up a community and is doing it in a way for the purpose of more personal growth for you, but to grow a community. And what, just the other day, maybe last week, you launched your whole new platform.
Yeah.
So there's so much laid into that, right? Like, you have this confidence about yourself that you can do this.
Yeah, look, it stems back to going to America and just getting that confidence within myself, because look, I think unfortunately here in Australia, we're brainwashed from day one. Be humble. Don't think big. Follow the crowd. Don't speak too loud. You know, like, because if you dream too big, you're going to think you're better than your mates. But of course, like, you've got to be a good person. You need to be respectable. But what I find so often with other creatives, and funnily enough, all the time with athletes that I work with, they are really afraid to put themselves out there because they don't want to look like they're trying too hard, or they're not, part of the team. Like, they're putting themselves out too much, and it really drives me crazy, because I'm like, no, like, you need to inspire the youth and inspire other people. Like, we're not going to see it as being like, it's not your ego. Like, it's helping others. So I think I encourage people like, yeah, of course, be humble and be kind and be a good person, but don't be so humble that you're giving up opportunities, because this happens all the time here in Australia. You know, a lot of people here in Australia might not like American people, but they are taught from a young age, be proud of who you are, be confident, dream big, like, yeah, let's do it, So from living in America, that was the biggest difference that I learned quickly. And the funny thing is that they want to work in teams. They want to work together. Here in Australia, it's the tall poppy syndrome thing that kicks in again and again. It's like, oh, this is mine. I don't want to share it. So, of course, there's people that want to work together in teams and help each other, but I think we've got a long way to go in that sense. And that's why I really want to push that message of, like, think big. Like, don't feel guilty if you have a big dream. It's possible, and there's power in numbers. Work together.
Yeah, there is definitely power in numbers, and community is where each of us have the opportunity to grow as well. Like, I'm a big believer in being a contributor to something that is going to be bigger than me. The whole is greater than some of its parts, and then when you're able to then collaborate and to bring your expertise and to help someone else grow, the community grows, and everyone in that community starts to level up.
Yeah, exactly. Because, of course, like, in the beginning, when I first moved to Melbourne and, I was doing my photography and videography, I was so afraid to share my knowledge or tell any other photographer or videographer what I was doing. I always saw them as a threat. And then I quickly realized after a number of years, like, no, like, it's important to help each other, work as a team. If there's a whole bunch of us financially doing really well or just getting great jobs, that is a healthy industry. If all of us are struggling, that's not a healthy industry.
Yeah. And you're helping people, the individuals grow, and to nurture them to be their individual self, right? So they're going to be taking the information that you're passing on to them and then letting it work within them, and they're going to grow into something else entirely. So, to what you were saying about just trying to, hold on to information and the knowledge and not share that, or when you're taking inspiration from other people, it's, it could almost feel like theft of intellectual property. But what people don't necessarily understand is that when someone was to pass on advice, if you're going to give someone advice, you're not necessarily telling them verbatim what you need to do, right? Like, they're not going to be able to walk your path, right? They're able to just take that tidbit of wisdom and then to take it in and turn it into their own. Like, there've been many times when, I'll do research and say that, okay, this particular, this creative, this is how they've done it. Take that bit of information and apply it like carbon copy, right? And I'm like, it's not working.
Yeah.
That's because it's just, there's no authenticity behind it. You know, everything, their whole entire life came to that one point and had that bit of information, and they shared that, and that's what worked for them. It wasn't that, it was everything else about that. Yeah. So what you're doing is planting seeds and elevating communities and changing the narrative of how things need to operate.
Yeah, because I think, I mean, look, now it's really cool and trendy to be a creative. You know, when I first started, it definitely wasn't cool. It was just a bunch of old white guys taking photos of flowers and birds, you know. So, yeah, like the thing for me is I've realized, like, I want the scene to thrive here. You know, I want creatives to have as much knowledge as they can. And where I really want to help people is, you know, the business side too of being an artist, because when I sit down and have coffee with a lot of my creative friends, they're so talented, but they've got no idea about the business side. And like a lot of people might do a course or they, you know, whatever they study, the first thing you got to do when you come into the real world is write an invoice and deal with clients. No one teaches this stuff, you know? So that's why for me, I'm realizing, okay, there's a gap here, there's a problem here. I want to help other creatives make more money and achieve their dreams. And like I've lived my dream life, you know, as a creative. I've got to travel the world, work with all my favorite people, you know, athletes and hip hop artists, and I'm so grateful for it. But I've just made so many mistakes along the way, and in a lot of aspects, I should be financially in a far better situation than I am, but it's because I've had to make all these mistakes over the years. And now I feel like just in the last like probably 12 months to 18 months, I'm really starting to understand, okay, so this is how you run a business. This is how you make money. Of course, like I don't know everything. I'm still learning every day, but I've put a lot more emphasis on the business side than the creative side, and that, you know, hand in hand just creates far better results.
Do you think by doing that it could compromise the quality of the creative side and then ultimately then diminish the business side because you're not creating like how you used to? Where's that balance?
Yeah, look, I think finding a balance in any aspect is always the tricky part. But I mean, look, I've been a full-time photographer, videographer for, you know, 15 years, and I've spent a lot of time studying the art and learning, and I'm consistently still learning. Like that's just in my blood. I'm always going to do that, but it's just putting more emphasis on the business side. So say as an example, I used to just spend a lot of time on Instagram or YouTube learning about, how do you take a photo like this, or how do you light a video scene like this? So instead of spending hours doing that, now I'll spend more time listening to business podcasts and, you know, understanding like, how do you make $10,000 a month and then $100,000 a month and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? It's just learning all these tactics. So, you know, like you can't do everything. You're not going to be able to do it all, but that's why it's also the people that you surround yourself with. So I've got a creative director. Her background's Brazilian, and I always say to her, you know, let's incorporate some Brazilian culture into the video. Like, I'm going to go and do this business thing if you can put some time today into the creative. So we're doing a commercial over the next 2 days with Beck Allen with her. And this last week, I've been focusing on the business. So I said to my creative director, all right, you're directing this project. You know, it makes sense. She's a female athlete. You're a female director. I think this is far better that you take control of this. So this is your baby. Like, I'll film it, but you direct me.
Cool. Yeah, no, it is. So like for you, it's just a matter of then trying to find the seeds, right? Like where are your shortcomings in your workflow or in your professional career, and like trying to get those seeds and then plant those in the back of your mind, and then seeing how that sprouts and then works and cultivates with everything else that's already going in there. You know, like, would it be right in saying that it's not about trying to necessarily shift the paradigm too much from creative to business, but just having little dose of it to see how they can start to fuse together? Yeah,
because look, I think if you're making also better business decisions, like say for me, if I can get bigger budget video projects it means that I can put more time and effort into the creative as well. You know, I could spend a lot of time doing small budget, like not very interesting work, you know, just to keep the wheels in motion, or I can get better at business and marketing and personal brand and attract higher paying clients, bigger jobs. And then, you know, when you break it down, you're actually able to spend more time on the creative because you're doing less jobs, but bigger paying and high production work.
And then layering that with your personal brand part of it is that you start to become recognized for someone that has a particular quality, particular standard.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're coming to you because that's what they want, and you don't have to compromise.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not saying that this is the case just yet, but you know, the goal, I think everyone's goal is to work less but make more. So for me, it's that thing of just really trying to sit down and write my goals and put together like an actual business plan. Like I don't talk to any photographers or videographers too often that have an actual business plan. Like, I'm trying to make this much money, I need to do this much this month, I'm going to do this type of marketing. I think everyone's just so caught up with, oh, I need to put stuff on TikTok and Instagram, but what's the business method behind it? You know, like, you've really got to start breaking stuff down and looking at it from a business point of view. Like, my whole mindset has just completely changed in the last 12 months, just understanding business better.
Yeah, you know, like, and to that, you know, you set the goals, and then from when you know that this is what you want to achieve by a given date, then you can break that down into several milestones. And then those milestones, you can say that, okay, by the end of this month, I need to achieve this. And then you can say that, all right, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, we need to also then hit these targets, break that down to like Monday, we need to get this done. And then be like, these are the things we need to get done before lunch, all the way down to like, what are you going to do right now? And then what you do right now will then feed back in and work its way up towards achieving that big goal. It just helps with providing direction and guidance for yourself, and then gives you the confidence and assurance that you're working towards something. You know? Yeah,
definitely. I think what you touched on earlier before when you asked me, like, what have I learned from dealing with, you know, some of these high profile athletes? And I think you quickly realize these guys have a very structured timetable, and structure creates achieving goals, which creates success. And that's one thing I've really learned. I mean, I'm a Virgo, I'm a perfectionist. I need structure. And I've learned that, you know, instead of staying up all night and editing now, I'll go to bed early, get the sleep that I need, wake up early, be more productive, you know, only do meetings on these days at these times, and just, create far more structure and just being more productive.
Yeah, dude, I hear that, man. Like, it is about bringing all the components of your life into alignment as well. You know, that there is diminishing returns if you're going to be up all night editing. You know, you have that drive, but you also have to recognize, like, what's the return on this? Like, is this really worth it? What's the opportunity cost here? Sleep. Can I afford to give up sleep right now? So no, it's a constant balancing act, and as you were saying, that, you know, just through the journey, through the years, you pick up on you know, your wisdom, and realizing that for you, it's now you're at the position where there's still constant growth, but also wanting to share what you've learned, some of the shortcomings, the mistakes that you've made along the way, and build this community.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, knowledge is power. And I've realized, I listened to an amazing podcast with Kevin Hart, and he was talking about, if I take all this knowledge to the grave with me, this is not helping anyone. Like, it's so important to, you know, see your community thrive and do better. And I don't have all the answers, but I've definitely learned a few things along the way. And just by passing down a few things to a few people is going to make a difference.
Yeah, dude, it's the process, man. And then even just by doing that, you're gonna be asking more questions of yourself along the way, learning more in that process, and then feeding it back in as well.
Yeah, because it's funny. I've actually found it one of the most rewarding things is coaching and mentoring people. I didn't realize it was going to be so rewarding and make me feel like so good. Like, because when you're seeing people get results and they come back to you and like, oh, Rush, like, you helped me with this, I can't thank you enough. You're like, oh wow, it's like you feel like a proud dad, you know?
Yeah, dude. And it shifts things. And that's what I was saying. Like in the process of doing it, you start to discover things about you as well, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then, you know, the purpose may have been, you may have different reasons for having started this, the coaching and mentoring programs. But then along the way, you're like, you know what, this is actually really fucking important, right?
Yeah.
It's not just for them, but for you. And then that just brings you up to a different level. And then by doing so, elevates everything else. I'm loving it, man. I'm loving. I really do admire the trajectory that you've gone on. That was one of the things that that really drew me to you. Like initially was back in the day when I was at Basketball Australia, however many years ago, that I came across your work, and that was, we used that as an example of a standard that we wanted to reach. More visually, there was an aesthetic there that you're able to capture something, and then when we started exploring, it was understanding that, okay, there's an essence behind it. And then you've kind of evolved from that into just really digging deep into that storytelling. And then through that, I'm sure you discovered a lot of personal growth.
Yeah.
And then now you're sharing all of it, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, man. I think I'm really fortunate to have found my passion. And I think, you know, as us creative types, when you find your passion, it's all you can do. Yeah. I can't think about anything else. And when I've tried a few other ventures and, you know, things along the way, it's your gut screaming again, just going, no, this isn't right. So yeah, I feel very blessed to, honestly, I wake up every day with a smile on my face. I'm motivated. I feel excited. And especially when you're doing storytelling videos, like say this Peter Bowl video that just came out yesterday, I've had so many messages from people saying, oh, I felt quite emotional watching that. I'm like, yes, that's the response I wanted. So
gotcha.
For me, that's the ultimate reward.
Yeah, no, it was good, man. Dude, where can they connect with you?
So all my socials are It's James Rush. So ITS James Rush. So the best bet is itsjamesrush.com, and same on Instagram.
And Rush Media Group.
Yeah, Rush Entertainment Group.
Rush Entertainment.
Yeah. So they'll see all the tags and collaboration posts on my personal Instagram.
Yeah.
So that feeds into everything. So
what's up next, man?
Well, so yeah, we're doing this Beck Allen commercial for the next 2 days. I'm just waiting to release this Tom Brady commercial, which I can't wait for the world to see. And I've got another photography meetup here in Melbourne coming shortly, which is, you know, a free event, community event. Once again, like, it's just so rewarding seeing how people, you know, reacted at this first photography meetup that I did. Like, it's just that, you know, seeing creatives come together and giving them opportunities that they necessarily wouldn't be able to get elsewhere. So for me, being able to provide that and being in a position where I can financially put that on is just really rewarding for me. So that's going to be happening in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Cool.
Yeah, man, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff going on, but there's a few things I probably can't mention just yet to the public, but some exciting stuff in the works.
Cool, man. James Rush, thank you very much.
Appreciate it.